Hello, welcome back with me again on this Chinese business culture series. And for today, we are going to talk about the way people address each other in the workplace. We can start with the first one, the way you address your superior or the way a superior addresses their employees in the workplace. Normally, people would give you a formal address if you happen to be the boss or someone in a superior position in the company. People would say President Zhang or Chairman Liu. So remember the rule, you always start with a position title plus the last name if you want to address someone who is senior and who is a boss or a superior in the company or in the workplace. The way you address your subordinates or people who work for you can be very simple. You can just call them old Zhang or young or little Wang, which sounds a little bit funny in the English language. However, if you say that in Chinese, like 老张, 老 means old, 张 is the last name, or 小周, 小 means little. That happens to be in my name, this word, 小 Liu, that means little Liu. So that's a very common way people address each other in the workplace. How people address each other between colleagues. Again, very, very common. People call you old Zhang or little Zhang or young Liu. So you say old plus the last name, or little or small or young plus the last name. Very often you also come across people who use the full name, the whole name, to call each other. If you happen to have a name Wei Jie, and people may just call you Wei Jie without Mr., without Miss, just Wei Jie, the entire name. It doesn't mean they are trying to be rude. It's just part of the way people can call each other.
I noticed this morning when I came in, you were introducing me, and you naturally call me Ling 女士. Here, if they don't know the name, they would go by maybe the age. And if you're older, they would say 大姐,大哥, or they would call maybe IE, just to be polite.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you short. And I think we have heard from Dinah a number of words that we always come across in greeting each other, like 大姐,阿姨. That's exactly part of the ways people call each other in China or greet each other in China.
Right.
大姐 means elder sister, or 大哥 means elder brother, right? So even you mean that you have observed in China, when people meet each other, greet each other, even if they don't know one another, they just call by this guessing how old each person is, and then call the other person 大哥,大姐.
Right.
Sharp observation, and that's exactly what a lot of my other foreign friends are telling me. Wow, are they related? I said, no, it's just the way people call each other.
Right. And it really is just to show respect. And, so I was going to say, otherwise, if they know your name, maybe they'll call you by your last name, and not so often by the first name. In China, we do pay attention to the seniority not only in status, as I mentioned just in the previous session, we also pay some attention to the seniority, the hierarchy in the age factor. So if you happen to be older in age at workplace, people tend to call you old plus your last name, like 老张, okay, or 老魏. If you happen to be young, or younger than the rest of them, people tend to call you Yang Zhou. That means 小周, that means young plus your last name. And sometimes you may hear people call 师傅. 师傅 means master. It doesn't mean you happen to be a master in any professional field. It's just a very traditional
and a very old way people call someone who is older in age than them to show some respect, like Master Li, that means Li Shifu. Bear in mind, people do make the distinction between foreigners and local people, so very unlikely people would call you Old Smith. And very unlikely people would call you Master Smith. The use of master in front of one's last name is not only used for some older people in your company, like Master Liu, like Liu Shifu, and it is a very common way you call those people who are in the service industry, or the people in your company who do the driving, the drivers, or the people who do the cleaning, the cleaning staff. So for the people who actually do this kind of admin and this kind of subordinate work, and we tend to call them master so and so to show respect to the people there.
You know, as I mentioned, in the company that I worked with, because they're U.S. companies, so the people are very relaxed and they're not really adhering to that. But, and the other two that I didn't mention is Lao and Xiao. And so, you know, it's not old and small, but again, it's to show respect. You know, when somebody's older in age, you just use Lao and then their name, their last name. Lao Zhang, Lao Li, or else Xiao Zhang, Xiao Li.
However, in this country, to be old is not a bad thing, and to be called old so and so means you get the respect. Isn't that interesting? And I would like to look at is the gender, whether gender plays a role in the way people address each other. Normally, it doesn't. So people normally wouldn't say Miss or Madam unless it is a very formal relationship. So by the way people call each other at work, we normally wouldn't tell whether it's a lady we are talking about or it's a man, because gender normally is not indicated in the way people call each other. People normally hesitate when it comes to a foreigner in front of them. They very often really feel at a loss how to call you. So here you have the advantage of telling them the way you want them to call you. Okay. And however, I want to remind us here that since Chinese culture is very formal in the way they treat each other verbally, so you may come across the insistence, the persistence in calling you by Mr. So-and-so or Madam so-and-so, even though you've known them for a long time. So in that case, just accept it. Unless you are really very, very particular about it. It's not the way they want to keep a distance from you, it's really the way they want to show degree of respect for you. In many joint venture companies or foreign companies operating in China now, and even the local staff start to give themselves a foreign name. So most of the time, even though it is a typical Chinese young lady working in the company for you in China, they may come up to you saying, call me Tracy or call me Maggie. So they all seem to have a foreign name aside to use among themselves or between you and them in the work environment, especially in the foreign companies and joint ventures. And in talking about the way people address each other, you really should not take it very slightly, because the way you address them, the way you show respect are very much interconnected. So learn the right way, learn the protocol, so that you will be really, really, really well treated and regarded by the way you show your understanding of the people's practice over there. Again, good luck, and hope to see you again for the next session. Bye-bye. Hello, welcome back with me on this Chinese Business Culture series. My name is Xiaohua Shen, and I'm glad to share another topic with us today. It is about self-introduction in the business environment. What we really should know about introducing yourself in the Chinese business environment.
everybody. My name is Bernadette Longley, but you can call me Bernie for short. And I've been in China now for 3 years. I've been working in the field of education and publishing for this time, and I'm very, very glad to be living here.
Do you have any keen observations in terms of the differences between people introducing themselves, the way they do here and the way they do back in Australia?
There are a lot of differences, that is true.
And can you tell us one or two here?
One main thing I realize is that name cards are a very important thing to have and to use in China. In the West, people have name cards and they use them, but it's more important, more crucial to have them and to use them when introducing yourself in China.
In China, people tend to prefer the third person introduction. It doesn't mean they do not do introduction themselves, but if they have a choice for the third person to give an introduction on them, they would prefer to wait for that to happen. So if you feel there is hesitation on the person's side not to introduce themselves, I think you should really understand why. Perhaps that's the time they're really waiting for another person to do it on their behalf. But when people do make self-introduction, they tend to give name. And first of all, they will say, 你好. And if the person is older than them or more senior in position, they would like to say, 您好. 您 is just another term for 你, but it's more respectful, reserved for people who are more important or much senior in age. So after 您好, this greeting, people normally give their name. Again, talking about name, Chinese people's name consists of two parts, their last name first and then their first name second. So last name and first name together. And for the last name, very often it has two characters or two words together. So try to decipher which is their last name or which is their first name. But very often it comes just the opposite, the last name and first name. Be careful. People in China tend to be formal in their interaction, so do not jump into the first name basis when you just get to know each other, just get introduced. So stick to the last name plus Mr. or Miss or Mrs. at the beginning until the person initiates, say, oh, you can call me by the first name.
In the West, people very often would use their first name because they feel it's a lot more comfortable or close. But in China, I find that it's not something you would do. You would not introduce yourself using your first name. You would perhaps use your family name, Li or Liu or whichever, perhaps Mr. Li or Mr. Liu, but to use your first name as what you offer to people you haven't become familiar with is not something that happens here in China.
So it's not a norm here?
No, it's not a norm.
Yes.
It's not a norm.
So when you first heard people at the beginning, when you heard people introducing themselves by their last name, and what was your reaction to that?
Well, at first it was a little bit strange, of course, because the order is different. In China, your family name is first and your first name is second, whereas in the West, for example, Bernadette Longley is the other way around. And it probably, I can recall it was a little bit strange at first to get used to addressing people just with their family name. But the feeling that you get from people is that they're a lot more comfortable if you use their family name rather than their full name even. It's a lot more, I guess, closer in a way. If I say, for example, Li Guohui, if I call somebody Li, then it's almost equivalent to a first name basis as in the West.
Another thing I think we really need to be aware of is the order of self-introduction. In a formal occasion, normally is the seniorest person introduces himself first, and then that goes down in the ladder of importance in terms of the ranks. And then another factor comes into the order of introduction, self-introduction, is the age. And normally the older person introduces himself first, and then the person younger will be the next. And another thing, I think, which is slightly different from the Western culture is the gender issue here in the order of introduction.
And in China, there is no such a practice or no such a tradition saying lady first. So very often it tends to be the opposite phenomenon. You may hear men introduce themselves first and then women. But of course, in this modern society, Chinese culture is changing and it gets a lot of influence from the Western culture. So don't be surprised to see some of the Chinese people, they follow the Western protocol in the introduction. In China, very often you may come across another thing that can be surprising is some of the people, when you are together, do not introduce themselves at all. And don't, at this time, ask for their names. If they do not introduce themselves, very often either they do not wish to be known by the group, or very often because they assume their position is not so important to waste your time to get to know them. Well, introduction. What you need to do, what you should not forget, is a smile on your face. Chinese people smile a lot. Okay, the smile is there for much longer than you can observe in many cultures. So smile when you do the introduction, and also handshake when you introduce each other or when you introduce yourself. The handshake, again, remember, should not be so forcefully, because in China, people tend to shake hands much more lightly. They don't use that much strength. And also, remember in this stage, when you're doing the self-introduction, to repeat your name if you found they are puzzled by a foreign name. So the name should be pronounced slowly, clearly, and if you can, try to think of a Chinese translation of your name, and that will make your life much easier and for people to remember you much more easily too. What are other things they normally bring into their self-introduction?
Usually something about where they work, what they have done, what relevance they have to the situation. It's perhaps in the West you may make small talk, you may talk about something else, but in China people connect through their work or connect through their common tasks that they may be doing. Something that I've noticed. Also, it's quite common to give handshakes in China. It's people may think that in China it's not so westernized in that regard, but people very often will be shaking hands. When
they do shake hands a lot.
They
right?
do.
I think sometimes they may even shake hands. I mean, in situations normally you would admit in the West.
Right.
I realize very often people meet me several times already, but then when they see each other again, they shake hands again.
Right. Yes.
It does happen to you too.
That's actually a very German thing to do. In Germany,
German.
they do the same.
They do too. I see. Yeah, I did hear that before you were in Germany for a while as well.
Right.
Okay.
No, they're into handshaking a lot there as well. But.
Well, introduction. Do it with a smile. Do it with a warm but gentle handshake, and do it in a clear way when you pronounce your name. And hope you will have an easier start everywhere you go here in China with your good introduction. Thank you, and see you next time. Welcome back again. And here we are together for the cultural series on Chinese business culture. We've already covered quite a number of topics, and for today, we'll concentrate on how we do introduction for each other or introducing each other in the workplace. We should remember Chinese culture is focused on hierarchy, and it is a very formal culture in terms of communication style. How does that reflect itself in the way we actually do the introduction for each other? Well, non-verbally, we should always try to bow a little bit or nod our head a little bit when you are being introduced. And also try to have a smile on your face when you are being introduced. Once